First time following the arrest of a young man who they say betrayed their trust.
Deputies have now charged the boyfriend of Gennia Grimes with the murder of the Atlanta student who went off to college in Alabama. Fox 5's Kevin Stewart is live in Atlanta with the update. Kevin?
Courtney and Russ, we are live here at Antioch Baptist Church North. This is where Grimes' funeral will be held this weekend. The family is still putting the final touches on it and trying to process what happened.
She had big dreams.
Gennia Grimes' loved ones cannot believe she's gone, shot to death while away at college just over a week ago. Her boyfriend told deputies it was a suicide.
She had everything: talent, beauty, a bright future, and just seconds later, it was all gone. March 27th, a stretch of Highway 80 East in the Quiet Walk community. Sirens wail as deputies and medics race to a call, a person shot inside a car. What they find is a young woman, barely clinging to life, slumped in the passenger seat. 21-year-old Gennia Grimes, a standout dancer with Alabama State University's Honeybees team, a soon-to-be graduate studying criminal justice, a new mother, and now the victim of a gunshot wound to the head. Next to her in the car, her boyfriend, 20-year-old Rogers McLeod Jr. His story is immediate and suspicious. He says she did it, that Gennia took her own life. But there's a problem. Actually, there are several. Her mother doesn't believe it, neither does her mentor. Friends say she'd been planning to leave him. Family members had just seen her full of joy, preparing for her next chapter. And then suddenly, this, on the side of a highway, with one person telling a story no one around her is buying. Have you ever heard of a case like this in your city? Let us know in the comments. Your thoughts could help others spot red flags before it's too late. And here's the part that still haunts Gennia's loved ones the most. After it happened, after that single, devastating moment, Rogers went to her family's home and said something they'll never forget. Because when they heard his words, they knew everything was wrong. Stay with us. Gennia Grimes wasn't just another name on a college roster. She was a beam of light in every room she walked into. Charming, focused, and radiant with purpose. Born and raised in the Ben Hill neighborhood of Southwest Atlanta, Gennia came into the world as what her family affectionately called their miracle baby. The youngest of her siblings, she was the child that brought new life into a family already filled with love. Angela Grimes, her mother, once said, "She was our joy, our surprise, our answered prayer. We knew from day one she was going to be something special." And special she was. Growing up, Gennia quickly developed a deep sense of empathy and a natural inclination toward justice. She didn't just want to understand the world, she wanted to make it better. This passion led her to pursue criminal justice at Alabama State University, where she excelled academically and was on track to graduate in August 2025. Her goal? To become a lawyer and be a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. But Gennia's life wasn't all about textbooks and case law. She had rhythm in her veins and fire in her feet. As a proud member of ASU's iconic Honeybees dance team, she captivated crowds with her magnetic stage presence and signature energy. Performing was more than a hobby, it was a form of self-expression. It was how she coped, how she celebrated, and how she connected. She was a star, one of Gennia's mentors and biggest supporters said. Not just on the dance floor, but in life. She had a warmth about her. She could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with a new family. As Gennia navigated college life, she met Rogers B.B. McLeod Jr., a fellow student at ASU. By all outward appearances, their relationship was typical for young love. Affectionate, sometimes intense, and full of shared dreams. Friends often saw them together on campus, holding hands, sharing laughs. Over time, their connection grew deeper, and they eventually had a son together. To Gennia, becoming a mother was life-changing. She embraced it with grace, balancing her studies, dance rehearsals, and parenting with a determination that impressed everyone around her. Her family, especially her mother, Angela, rallied behind her. She loved that little boy with her whole heart, Angela recalled. Everything she did, every class she took, every performance, she did it for him. But underneath the surface of this seemingly vibrant life, there were quiet tensions, whispers that something wasn't quite right. According to those close to her, Gennia had been considering ending her relationship with McLeod. Angela Grimes later shared that her daughter had told her she was planning to break things off. It wasn't an easy decision. After all, they shared a child. But Gennia had dreams too big to be weighed down by something that no longer felt safe. "My baby didn't deserve that," Angela said in the days following her daughter's death. She wanted to be free, to chase her goals, and raise her son in peace. And he took all that away. Gennia's commitment to her future was unwavering. Her schedule was packed, but she never lost sight of her vision. Her professors noted her curiosity in class. Her dance team described her as both leader and sister. She had recently updated her vision board with images of law schools, successful black women in the legal profession, and quotes about justice. Her goals were tangible, and they were within reach. She was just months away from graduation. She was preparing to move forward, with or without McLeod by her side. On social media, Gennia was known for her positivity and authenticity. Her posts celebrated milestones, encouraged others, and offered glimpses into her world as a student-mother-artist hybrid, navigating life with admirable resilience. In a now heartbreaking post, she once wrote, "Even when the world feels heavy, I'm still standing. For me, for my baby, and for what's next." Gennia Grimes was not just a college student. She was a mother, a daughter, a dancer, and a dreamer. She carried the hopes of her family and the expectations of a future she was building one step at a time. Her story should have been about triumph, about walking across that graduation stage, about passing the bar, about dancing at her son's birthday parties for decades to come. But instead, it became about tragedy and questions. So many questions. Because just days after telling her mother she was ready to leave, she ended up dead on the side of a highway, with the man she had once loved claiming it was by her own hand. And her family? They never believed that for a second. Rogers B.B. McLeod Jr. was, to many who met him, the kind of young man you'd be proud to bring home. Tall, athletic, and soft-spoken, B.B. was a student athlete at Alabama State University, widely known for his football aspirations and charismatic charm. On the surface, he seemed like a solid guy, one with promise, discipline, and a quiet confidence that made people feel at ease around him. That's how he first came into Gennia Grimes' world. The two met on campus and were quickly drawn to one another. For 2 years, they shared what looked like a close bond. They studied together, laughed in the student union, attended campus events hand in hand, and eventually, they had a child together. To the people around them, especially Gennia's family, BB seemed like a dependable presence in her life. He wasn't just Gennia's boyfriend, he became part of the Grimes household in a real way. He joined family cookouts, visited during holidays, and even showed up to support Gennia at her Honeybees dance performances. Angela Grimes, Gennia's mother, recalled how kind he was in those early months. "We welcomed him," she said. "He ate at our table. My grandbaby called him Daddy. We didn't see any red flags back then." There's one memory that stands out. It was a family visit during Gennia's sophomore year. BB showed up wearing a crisp polo shirt, carrying a pie from a local bakery, a small gesture, but one that scored points with the family. He helped Gennia's younger cousin set up a game of cornhole in the backyard. He watched football with the uncles. He cleaned up after dinner without being asked. That evening, someone even joked, "He's husband material." Everyone laughed. No one knew how painfully ironic those words would become, but time reveals things that first impressions can't. Somewhere along the way, things shifted between BB and Gennia. Their once playful dynamic turned tense. The moments of public affection became fewer. And while there weren't bruises or loud fights, there was something quieter, something invisible to most, that began to fester behind closed doors. Angela noticed it first. Gennia, normally bubbly and open, had become more withdrawn when talking about her relationship. Conversations that used to include BB's name began to avoid it entirely. When Angela gently asked about him, Gennia's responses became vague. Then one day, the truth came forward in fragments. "She told me she was done," Angela later shared. "She said she loved him, but she couldn't do it anymore. Something had changed in him. She didn't feel free." It wasn't one specific moment that made her reach that decision. It was a pattern, a quiet erosion of peace. Friends later recalled that Gennia had started limiting how much she shared with BB. She'd sometimes wait until he was gone to FaceTime family or finish her assignments. She never accused him of physical harm, but there was a shift in control, an emotional grip that made her feel monitored, and in her words, drained. She wanted out. She was still trying to navigate how to co-parent, how to keep things respectful, and how to leave without triggering more conflict. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was looking for space, for peace. But that peace never came. When BB found out she wanted to end the relationship, something snapped. And the man who had once been treated like family, who had clapped at her dance recitals and passed mashed potatoes at the dinner table, became a name whispered with grief and rage. Because not long after she confided in her mother, Gennia Grimes would be found bleeding inside a vehicle on Highway 80 East, with BB beside her, telling authorities she did it to herself. And just like that, the young man who had once seemed like a safe harbor turned into the storm that took everything. It was a Monday morning like any other in the Wall community. A quiet stretch of Alabama's Montgomery County. The roads were calm, traffic was light, and the day had barely begun when a frantic 911 call shattered the stillness. Around 7:45 a.m., dispatchers received a report of a shooting near Highway 80 East. When deputies from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office arrived on scene, they found a gray vehicle pulled off the road. Inside was 27-year-old Gennia Grimes, unconscious, slumped over in the passenger seat, bleeding heavily from a gunshot wound. In the driver's seat sat Rogers B.B. McLeod, her boyfriend and the father of her child. He looked shaken but unharmed. The situation was tense. First responders moved quickly. One deputy immediately requested paramedics, while another began questioning McLeod about what had happened. According to law enforcement accounts, McLeod's explanation was both immediate and shocking. She shot herself. That's what he told deputies on scene. He claimed there was no fight, no warning, just a single shot, and then silence. Gennia had pulled the trigger herself, he insisted. But even in those early moments, that story raised more questions than answers. Gennia was rushed from the scene by emergency personnel. Her injuries were critical. Due to the severity of her wound, she was airlifted to Baptist Medical Center South in Montgomery. For a short time, her loved ones held on to hope that she might survive, but within hours of being admitted, doctors declared her dead. The loss hit like a freight train. News of her passing spread quickly, first through calls and texts, then across social media. Friends, family, and former classmates were devastated. Many struggled to make sense of what they were hearing. And then came the second blow, the claim that she had taken her own life. Those closest to Gennia immediately doubted that story. Angela Grimes, her mother, was one of the first to speak out.
He was the one who said that, she'd done this to herself, and nobody believed him.
My daughter didn't shoot herself, she said firmly. She was making plans. She was getting things together. She was focused on her son, on school, on moving forward. And she wasn't alone. Friends and relatives recalled recent conversations where Gennia had expressed excitement about the future. She was actively trying to move on from her relationship with McLeod. She was looking at internships, re-engaging with her dance community, and spending more time with her family. So why would a young woman with so much ahead of her suddenly end her life? Investigators started to ask the same question. At first, McLeod maintained his version of events, but as detectives looked closer, inconsistencies began to surface. His timeline was fuzzy. Details shifted during follow-up interviews. Physical evidence from the scene, ballistics, the location of the gun, the trajectory of the bullet, raised serious doubts about his account. One particularly troubling element, the position of the firearm in the car. According to preliminary reports, the weapon was found in a location that didn't match McLeod's version of the shooting. In fact, based on where the gun was discovered and how Gennia had been seated, it seemed increasingly unlikely that she could have fired the shot herself. Deputies also noted McLeod's demeanor. He wasn't hysterical. He wasn't pleading for help or desperate for updates on Gennia's condition. He was calm, too calm, according to one law enforcement official. And when asked to provide a written statement, he hesitated. Then came the turning point. As investigators pressed harder, McLeod's story began to shift. He no longer stuck strictly to the narrative of suicide. He started referencing an argument, suggested Gennia had been emotional, and vaguely implied that she may have acted irrationally. But again, nothing in the evidence or witness accounts backed that up. Even the text messages on Gennia's phone, retrieved with the family's cooperation, told a different story. In her final days, she was reaching out to friends, talking about her plans, and expressing relief about the decision to end the relationship. Not fear, not hopelessness, relief. What do you think happened in that car? Drop your theory in the comments. We read every one. As the hours turned into days, the mood around the investigation shifted. What had initially been treated as a potential suicide was quickly being reevaluated as something far more disturbing. Behind the scenes, detectives were preparing to challenge McLeod's account in court. They needed more than just gut instinct. They needed a case built on facts, forensics, and motive. And the deeper they looked into B.B. McLeod's past, the more troubling the picture became. Because this wasn't just about one morning on Highway 80, it was about everything that led to it. Following Gennia Grimes' tragic death, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office wasted no time launching a formal investigation. Though Rogers B.B. McLeod continued to insist that she had taken her own life, something about his story didn't sit right. Not with law enforcement, and certainly not with Gennia's family. From the outset, Assistant Chief Wesley Richardson was clear about the direction of the case. "This case involves domestic violence," he stated plainly to the press. It was no longer being treated as a potential suicide. The inconsistencies in McLeod's story, paired with the forensic evidence and testimonies from Gennia's loved ones, had shifted the tone of the investigation completely. The sheriff's office worked carefully and methodically, determined to preserve the integrity of the case. Every detail was scrutinized. Every piece of evidence had to be airtight. This wasn't just about justice, it was about protecting Gennia's memory and ensuring that her voice, now silenced, was still heard. Behind closed doors, investigators were compiling their findings, and what they found painted a chilling picture. The ballistics didn't match McLeod's narrative. The trajectory of the bullet suggested the shot could not have been self-inflicted, at least not from the angle Gennia had been seated in the vehicle. Moreover, there were no defensive wounds, no signs that she had held the gun. And the weapon? It was discovered in a position that contradicted McLeod's version of the events completely. Add to that the testimonies from those closest to Gennia, particularly her mother, Angela Grimes, and the case against McLeod was growing stronger by the hour. Angela was adamant, "My baby did not deserve that. She was trying to move forward with her life. She was done with him." Her words were raw, grounded in both grief and conviction. Gennia had confided in her about the relationship with McLeod. She'd said she was ready to move on. She wanted better, for herself and for her son. Angela wasn't alone. The entire Grimes family had once welcomed McLeod with open arms. He'd been treated like one of their own, joining in on family dinners, holidays, birthdays. They had trusted him. They believed he loved Gennia. That made the betrayal cut even deeper. "He sat at our table," one relative said. "He called her his queen, and then he took her from us." The heartbreak was matched only by the determination to see justice done. As the investigation progressed, McLeod's credibility continued to deteriorate. He was asked to take part in further questioning. Each time, new details emerged, details that conflicted with earlier statements. Detectives noted that his explanations grew vaguer, his timeline inconsistent. What had once been a clear-cut suicide in his version of events now came across as fractured, evasive, even rehearsed. Eventually, the evidence reached a critical point. On March 31st, just 4 days after Gennia's death, Rogers B.B. McLeod was formally arrested and charged with capital murder. The charge was severe, signaling that authorities believed the act was intentional, deliberate, and utterly unjustified. He was taken into custody and transported to the Montgomery County Detention Facility. There, he was held without bond. The community's response was swift. Many were shocked. Others, particularly those who had followed Gennia's life and story, expressed heartbreak but not surprise. The people who knew her best had seen the cracks forming. They just hadn't expected it to end like this. Still, one question lingered in the air. What exactly tipped investigators over the edge? What final detail turned a case with conflicting stories into a full-blown homicide charge? The answer, it turns out, would come from a single moment, a piece of evidence buried in the hours following the shooting. Something undeniable, something even McLeod couldn't explain away. And once investigators found it, there was no turning back. News of Gennia Grimes' death swept through Alabama State University like a wave no one saw coming. For many, it felt unreal. Too cruel, too sudden, too senseless to process. One day, she was rehearsing routines with the honeybees and chatting about her dreams of becoming a lawyer. The next, her photo was being shared online with headlines no one ever imagined would be connected to her name. At just 22, Gennia had become more than a promising student or beloved dance teammate. She became a symbol of potential cut short, of the silent dangers in relationships that look perfect on the outside, and of a community's collective heartbreak. The Honeybees dance team, where Gennia had once lit up the stage with her energy and smile, honored her in the only way they knew how, with a tribute performance. No words, no music, just the sound of sneakers sliding across the floor, bodies moving in sync, and tears falling silently. Her absence was impossible to miss. Her spirit, though, lingered in every beat. Professors who had watched her grow into a sharp, articulate criminal justice major were stunned. She had so much to give, one faculty member said. She wasn't just another student, she was passionate, outspoken, and committed to helping others. Her classmates echoed those sentiments. Friends described her as someone who walked into a room and immediately changed the atmosphere. She was light, they said. She made people feel seen. But the person feeling her absence the most was her family, especially her mother, Angela, who now found herself in an impossible position, planning a funeral for her youngest child. Now, instead of celebrating her graduation, we're preparing to lay her to rest, she shared through tears. And then there was Gennia's 9-month-old son, a baby boy who would grow up with stories and photos instead of memories. A child who would never get to hear her voice, feel her hugs, or call her mama. The weight of that loss wasn't just emotional, it was practical too. Diapers, clothes, formula, daycare, the costs don't stop, even when a mother is gone. To support the family and help cover funeral expenses, loved ones set up a GoFundMe campaign. The goal wasn't just to give Gennia a proper goodbye, but also to help ensure her son had a chance at the life she dreamed of giving him. The community responded with open hearts. Donations poured in, accompanied by messages of sorrow, solidarity, and outrage. The campaign became more than a financial tool. It became a digital memorial. A space where people who knew Gennia, and even those who didn't, could share how she had touched their lives. How her story reminded them of someone they knew. How they wished they'd seen the signs earlier in their own lives. The grief wasn't limited to Montgomery or the ASU campus. It rippled through social media, across state lines, touching communities who had never heard of Gennia before, but now couldn't stop thinking about her. And in that grief, a collective promise began to form. Her story wouldn't fade. Her name wouldn't be forgotten. If this story touched you, the family wrote on their campaign page, consider sharing it. Let people know who Gennia was. Let's make sure her story helps protect someone else's daughter, sister, or friend. If this story touched you, consider subscribing so we can keep telling stories that matter, stories that demand justice. Gennia Grimes' tragic death is not just another true crime story. It's a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk behind closed doors, especially for young women in college relationships. Her life was taken by someone she trusted, someone she loved. And while we may never fully understand what pushed Rogers Beebe McLeod to his breaking point, the underlying truth of this case lies in the hidden signs of domestic abuse that too often go unnoticed until it's too late. Domestic violence can take many forms, but one of the most insidious is the psychological manipulation that often accompanies it. Gennia was a young woman with dreams, talent, and a bright future ahead of her. But behind the closed doors of her relationship, things were not as perfect as they seemed. In the beginning, everything appeared to be normal, like any college romance, full of promise and excitement. However, as time passed, subtle signs of emotional abuse began to creep into the relationship. Emotional manipulation and gaslighting are common tactics used by abusers to control their partners. Gaslighting, in particular, involves making someone question their perception of reality, convincing them that their thoughts and feelings are wrong. This can make the victim feel confused, isolated, and ultimately powerless. Gennia's eventual decision to confide in her mother about wanting to end the relationship is a powerful clue that things weren't right. She saw the warning signs, but as so many young women do, she was caught in the grip of emotional manipulation. For young women in college relationships, the vulnerability to these dynamics is heightened. The pressures of academics, social life, and newfound independence can sometimes cloud a student's judgment. The fear of losing someone they love, or the desire to make a relationship work, can prevent them from recognizing when things have crossed a line. Unfortunately, emotional abuse is often minimized or overlooked, even by close friends and family. It can be difficult to see the signs of control, especially when the abuser appears charming or beloved by others. McLeod was viewed as part of Gennia's family, respected, trusted, and even embraced. This makes the eventual betrayal all the more heart-wrenching. He was the good guy on the outside, but beneath that exterior, he was slowly eroding Gennia's sense of self-worth. This case highlights the critical importance of spotting red flags early in a relationship. Some of the warning signs to look for include excessive jealousy or possessiveness. If a partner tries to control who you hang out with or where you go, it's a red flag. Healthy relationships are built on trust, not control. Isolation from friends and family. Abusers often try to cut their victims off from their support network, making them dependent and easier to control. Frequent belittling or humiliation. If someone constantly makes you feel inferior or invalidates your thoughts and feelings, it's emotional abuse. Unpredictable mood swings or threats. If your partner is often angry or lashes out at you for small things, it's a warning sign that things may escalate. Gaslighting. This involves twisting your perception of reality, making you question your own sanity. The emotional scars of abuse can be just as severe as physical ones, yet they often go unnoticed. But there is hope. Awareness is the first step in preventing such tragedies from happening in the future. College campuses, families, and communities must foster environments where young women are empowered to recognize these signs and take action before it's too late. If you or someone you know is in a relationship that feels unsafe, there are resources available. There are hotlines, campus support groups, and shelters that can offer confidential help and support. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, is available 24/7 to provide guidance and support for those in need. Many colleges also have on-campus resources like counseling centers and advocacy programs to help students navigate difficult relationships. The psychological profiles of abusers often involve a need for control and dominance. They may blame the victim for their own behavior, trying to make them feel responsible for the abuse. This is a common tactic used by abusers to avoid accountability and maintain power over their partner. In McLeod's case, his insistence that Gennia's death was a suicide is a classic example of an abuser trying to shift the blame onto the victim, making it harder for the truth to come to light. As tragic as Gennia's story is, it also serves as a warning to others, especially young women who may find themselves in relationships that feel off or unsafe. If you or someone you love is facing similar struggles, don't wait. Seek help, speak up, and remember, no one deserves to live in fear, and no relationship is worth sacrificing your safety for. The true lesson of Gennia's death is not just about the heartbreak her family and friends endured, but about the steps we can all take to prevent others from experiencing the same fate. Recognizing the signs of abuse, offering support, and taking action when necessary can save lives.
Southwest Atlanta family is devastated by the death of their daughter, and now the Montgomery County, Alabama Sheriff's Office has launched an investigation into the death of Alabama State University student Gennia Grimes.
Grimes was a proud member of the Alabama State University Honeybees dance team.
This isn't just a true crime story. It's a real warning for all of us to stay vigilant, offer support to those who need it, and ensure that no one has to suffer in silence.
Yeah, good afternoon to you both. Everybody who knew Gennia Grimes described her as a superstar.
If you or someone you know is in immediate danger or needs support, please reach out to your local resources, hotlines, or trusted community services. No one should ever feel alone in a situation like this. The heartache left in the wake of Gennia Grimes' tragic death is impossible to measure. A mother lost her daughter, and a young child, just 9 months old, lost the most important person in his life. But the loss stretches beyond just those who knew her personally. Gennia's dreams, the life she was building, and the bright future she worked so hard for were stolen in a single senseless moment. She was almost at the finish line. Gennia was months away from graduating with a law degree, ready to give her son the life she never had, a life filled with opportunity, safety, and love. But instead, that future was cut short by violence that no one saw coming. What should have been a day of promise and possibility turned into one of profound loss.
The 21-year-old killed herself. Now deputies tell the family they are working it as a death investigation. The family says they pray the truth will come out.
Do you think your daughter would kill herself? No. She wouldn't even touch the gun. She was afraid of guns.
9 months ago, Gennia added the title of mom to her accomplishments when she gave birth to her son, Rogers McLeod III. But she went back to school determined to follow her dreams and keep dancing and one day become an FBI agent. Her family and friends say they won't stop until justice is served.
The emotional impact of her death extends far beyond her family. Her classmates, her friends, and even those who only knew her through her community efforts have all felt the ripple effect of her tragic end. Her dream of becoming a lawyer to fight for justice was suddenly replaced with the heart-wrenching reality that justice for her may never come soon enough. But this is not just a story about loss. It is about the need for justice. Justice must not just be legal, it must be remembered. Gennia's death cannot be reduced to a mere statistic or forgotten tragedy. Her life, her potential, and the love she shared with those closest to her deserve to be honored by ensuring that those responsible for such violence face the full weight of the law. Let us remember Gennia's story, not just for what was lost, but for the lessons it teaches us about love, violence, and the importance of justice in every form.